welcome to all of you this morning, bright and early on a Saturday in the middle of October for From Separation to Sexploration, navigating the liminal landscape of post-divorce sex. I know that's a bit of a mouthful to be approaching this early on a weekend, so I appreciate you being here to join us in this conversation. My name is Gaelyn Rae Emerson. I'm a certified professional life coach, couples relationship coach, and divorce recovery coach. I'm an associate certified coach with the International Coach Federation and a certified partner coach with the Association of Partners of Sex Addicts Trauma Specialists. I'm a member of SASH, the Society for the Advancement of Sexual Health. I'm not a newbie to SASH. This is my 6th presentation in as many years, and from my perspective, they just keep getting better and better. I'm a trainee in SASH's Advanced Topics in Problematic Sexual Behavior training program. That's the ATPSB levels 1 and 2. I've also been trained through the Gottman Institute, Center for Holding Space, Center for Life and Loss Transition, and a whole bunch of other things that kind of round out my professional repertoire. I've been working professionally in this field for about 7 years, since 2014, and in my capacity, I work with men, women, and couples dealing from a variety of different relational trauma issues. So everything from abuse, abandonment, addiction, deception, betrayal, divorce, infidelity, kind of that whole cluster of interpersonal crises and issues that come up in intimate human relationships. I do the bulk of that through my private practice, Women Ever After, where I'm really lucky to be able to work from my laptop wherever I happen to be in the world with clients and their laptops and their modems wherever they happen to be in the world. So I have clients across the US, Canada, UK, the rest of Europe, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, the Middle East, a different variety of places. And the reason that's relevant is because when I speak about the experiences and the information, the feedback, the input, the insights that I gleaned from my clients, there's a global universality to some of that stuff, which is really valuable and really relevant to the content and conversations that we're having in situations like this one. I'm also privileged to be on staff with Core Relationship Recovery, my colleagues Sharon Renierson and James Anier in West Palm Beach, Florida. So in my pre-COVID world, I'm on the road a lot. I've been sheltered in place here in Minneapolis since early March, going a little bit stir crazy on one hand, but also appreciating the benefits and the just the privileges of being able to sit in one space for multiple seasons in a row, living out of drawers instead of suitcases. I've developed a number of programs specifically for women in the aftermath of relationships that don't survive. And I'm not going to go into those in explicit detail. What I will say is this kind of sub-niche or sub-demographic of women whose relationships don't survive relational trauma has been a focal point of my practice for this entire 7 years. It's a sub-niche that found me. I didn't go searching for it, but my clients brought these issues to me and said, we need support. We need groups, we need content, we need more advocacy for this particular population, and because of their requests and with their support and inspiration, we've developed some of those things. I have no financial compensation or affiliations that need to be disclosed this morning per SASH guidelines. So what are we here for? Learning objectives. We're going to eclipse some of these, go a little bit broader beyond this a little bit, but this is going to be our orientation point. These are the published learning objectives for those of you who want to get what you came for this morning. So we're going to identify some of those sexually relevant factors and considerations, the emotional, physical, psychological, and social experiences from survivors of divorce and separation, including those impacted by betrayal-related scenarios. And we're going to break that down a little bit further. Objective number 2, we're going to compare and contrast some of the myths, the things that we might presume or assume to be true, and the truths, that lived experience presented by those re-entering this landscape of single sexuality. And we're going to discuss that in more detail as well. Third objective, to explore the sexual histories. We're going to look at some of the background and the context information that we have, contextual information, the mysteries, some of the things that we don't hear about on a regular basis because they happen in the privacy of individuals' bedrooms and homes and heads and heart spaces. And then some of those masteries, some of the skills and some of the resilience and some of the characteristics that present in these individuals, including some new insights that will hopefully empower us in one capacity or another to provide effective help and inspire tangible hope. So bottom line, we're going to delve into these lived experiences of women exploring post-separation sex with the goal of increased awareness, insight, and ideally increased sensitivity as well. So I want to say a special welcome to everyone. We have an interesting dynamic here this morning. We have two groups of participants in attendance this morning. First of all, we have kind of the classic traditional SASH conference attendees. We've got professionals here who are practicing within the field of sexual health and sexual advocacy. So I'm welcoming those of you who are here in that professional capacity. We also, thanks to SASH's more recent endeavors of opening up this conference for Community Day or for these sexual health awareness tracks, to invite members of the broader community at large to join us for some of these conversations, to participate, to learn, to listen, to add their interrelational awareness to the conversations that we're having about sexual health as a whole. So thank you very much to those of you who are here today in that non-professional capacity. And I'm going to do my best this morning to speak to both segments of those of you who are here with us. So why are we here? Hopefully we're here to learn about some stuff that we don't already know or don't know as fully as we would like to. And specifically with the topic we're exploring here today, this post-separation sexuality, we're going to be hearing some really intimate sexual stories, bravely told by very real human beings. And the reason I highlight that is because we need to treat these stories and these insights with some very sacred regard and respect. In some cases, some of the women and men who contributed to the content and the material that I'm presenting today may even be here this morning. So I'm going to do my best to speak with appreciation and respect for the sanctity and the spirit of those stories in which they were told. And I also invite all of you to join me here with some open minds and some open hearts in honor of those same individuals and these stories. So let's get into this. Meet the survey. The bulk of the material that we're going to be discussing, addressing, exploring today is from a survey that I created earlier this year. I disseminated it for about 2 weeks in, I want to say early September. And I headed the survey under this title, Having Sex or Not After Separation? Either way, I want to hear about it. So the objective of our survey was this, to collect information about the sexual experiences explored by men and women following separation or divorce from an intimate partner. The relational scope we were looking at was this, the permanent end versus, for example, a temporary or a therapeutic separation or a we're on a break kind of scenario of a significant romantic versus platonic relationship, either marital or non-marital, lasting 2 or more years. I'll take a minute and clarify terminology here. In the title of this presentation, I use the term post-divorce sex. We're also looking today at the end of a non-marital relationship in equal comparison and consideration with marital relationships. Survey disclaimer. So this was an information and data collection endeavor. This was not a formal research study. As such, we gave our survey participants, our survey respondents, a lot of wide berth to be able to answer the questions that they felt comfortable answering and to opt out of the ones that they didn't. We gave our survey respondents as much approachability, accessibility, assurance of anonymity that we possibly could. And in so doing, much of the data that we collected back is self-defined in terms of labels and description, resulting in responses that are independently subjective. So we balanced that need for quality data with user accessibility, and I hope we reached a bit of a sweet spot in doing that. What we have are responses that are somewhat informal and anecdotal. I do want to say this, they are representative of that broader work that I've done within this specific demographic. I'll add here that during these past 7 years, I've worked with a little over over 120 different clients, women going through separation or divorce after relational trauma. And so while we have, I think, 81 survey respondents here that we're going to be looking at today, it also reflects the much broader demographic in the conversations I have with those even who were not responsive to this study. And I'll probably highlight those at various junctures as we go. Finally, when we are talking here this morning about sexual engagement, sexual experience, sexual encounters, I made a decision to put the focal point within that equation on sexuality. So obviously there is often an interrelation, an intersection, an overlap, and sometimes an exclusion between the issues of love, emotion, attachment, and romance and sexual engagement specifically. And so we're just going to lean more heavily on that sexual engagement part of the equation. Okay, where are we going? We're going to survey this landscape, 5 different orientation points as we go here. We're going to begin at the starting line. We're going to look at what is and what comprise, what represents the sexual self of our respondents at the beginning of the relationship that ultimately ended. Next, we're going to move into what I call the EIB zone, or the everything in between arena. This is where we're going to look at what went down between the start of the relationship and the termination point for that same relationship, that span of time spent with a former intimate partner. Then we're going to move into what I call the acura zone, and I'm going to define that a little bit more when we get there. Basically, this is the point where we identify that line of demarcation between what happened, the extent and the expanse of one's former experience, transitioning into everything that comes after as one's future experience. Sexploration zone, this is where change is happening. This is where experimentation is happening. This is where we see an evolving sexual self, and we're going to spend probably the bulk of our time today addressing issues there in this sexploration zone. Finally, we're going to end on kind of a bonus point here, holding space for sexploration. We're going to look at what are the expressed and stated needs of these individuals navigating a liminal landscape of post-divorce sex, and how can we support others, and how can we create a culture that supports ourselves through this sexploration experience. So let's look at our respondents. Let's begin with meet the sexplorers. Demographic, this is very basic demographic material that we collected from our survey respondents. Total number of respondents, 81. I put the survey out there to both men and women, thinking I would probably get more response from women, but hopefully get a little bit of interaction or compare and contrast data from men. This is how we ended up breaking down. 99% of our respondents were female, 1% were male. I asked respondents, what did you define as the sexual orientation of the former relationship we're addressing in this survey? So 98% identified that relationship as heterosexual, 1% bisexual, and 1% homosexual. I asked, how long did that relationship last? This is the most key piece of information here on this slide, I think. The duration of that former relationship, the shortest one was 2 years. No surprise there, because that was the minimum requirement for participation in the survey. The longest was a 38-year marriage. So we're talking about a span of time represented in this morning's material from 2 years, a relatively young and short-lived relationship, to 38 years, one spanning almost 4 decades. The median average length of time, we can kind of keep that in mind as we're going through here, 19.2 years, so just under 2 decades. I asked our respondents, how old were you at the end of this former relationship? Were we talking in your 20s? Are we talking in your 60s? Or where are we falling in between? So the youngest respondent ended his or her relationship at age 19, and the oldest ended his or her relationship at age 63. The average median age for the respondents at the time of the survey was 43 years old. I wanted to know, how long has it been since that relationship ended? So what period of vantage point or retrospective time passage are we talking about here? The shortest was within that first 3 months after terminating a relationship, so a relatively new entree into this world. And the longest was a respondent who was taking the survey 16 years after that relationship ended. The average length of time passing between the end of the relationship and the survey was 3.5 years. I wanted to know total number of significant romantic relationships. This was again, was self-defined and subjective. Was this a once-in-a-lifetime relationship we're talking about, or have you had multiple relationships of this significance and substance? So the least number of romantic relationships addressed from our respondents was 1. The most was 6, with an average of 2.3. I wanted to know the parental status of our respondents. So those living with young children full-time at home at the time of separation was 37%. Those with grown children living away from home, 19%. I wanted to know about our respondents' ideas or perspectives and relationship with sexuality and spirituality. We often see a correlation or an interrelation between those things, and sometimes we see an exclusive or exclusion of spirituality from sexuality. So 31% of our respondents self-identified as extremely religious, saying, my faith is absolutely everything to me, and it definitely informs my sexual choices. 21% identified as spiritual, but not particularly religious. My spirituality and my sexuality may intersect according to my own spiritual beliefs. 20% identified as somewhat religious, saying my faith is a moderate part of my life, which may or may not influence my sexuality. 17% self-identified as non-religious, saying religion does not influence my sexuality at all. And 11% was a category, a combination of responses that essentially boil down to, yes, I am a spiritual person or a religious person with practices, and my sexual activity or behaviors are completely separate from that. So kind of a concurrent reality there. Okay, we are at the starting line. We're going to look at how did our respondents self-identify? How did they characterize their sexual self being at the start of this former relationship? This was the survey question I put out there. What 3 to 5 words or phrases describe yourself as a sexual being before you met your former partner? So this is the first of our compare and contrast exercises here. On one end of the spectrum, we heard phrases like vibrant, adventurous, and desirous. Self-aware of my own sexual needs and desires, comfortable in my own skin, young and ready for sex. I had a normal sex drive, healthy libido, curious and confident, alive, active, and interested, grounded, principled, faith-filled, and idealistic, connected and passionate, inquisitive, adventurous, and fun, curious, casual, monogamous, and romantic, excited to have sex as part of my married life, confident about loving myself, and curious to explore this new sexual world. On the opposite end of the spectrum, or an adjacent part of the spectrum, we heard responses like, I sort of enjoyed sex, I was wounded and promiscuous, inexperienced, confined, and uninformed, frustrated, alone, and numb, scared, traumatized, flat, bored, ugly, and unsatisfied, used, exploited, programmed, controlled, unfulfilled, neglected, shameful, sexual, clinical. Sex was performative and male orgasm centric. We collected 108 unique words and phrases from our survey respondents. Here are those that appeared or occurred with high frequency and repetitive occurrence. So we have 15 of our respondents use the word naive to describe their sexual self at this starting line. 12, curious. 7, virgin. 6, excited or exciting. 5, innocent, confident, adventurous. 4 occurrences of the word passionate, interested, and enjoyment. 3 occurrences of words sexual, playful, high sex drive, healthy, and active. So that brings us to the beginning, the point A of this everything in between zone. What happened next? What happened between points A and B in this relationship that we know ultimately did not survive? So what went down within this former relationship and what degree of impact resulted from those factors? We're going to look at issues and incidents, emotional and interpersonal dynamics, biological developments, intervention efforts, and terms of termination, and we'll look at those more closely here. So incidents and Incidents and issues. Here was the survey question we posed to respondents. Which of the following issues or incidents occurred within your former relationship, and this data isn't on this particular slide, what degree of impact did those issues have upon your relationship? I wanted to know, is this a minor impact issue, a major impact issue, or was it indeed a decisive impact issue, the thing that made the difference? So topping out the list, these are sorted by total number of respondents that said that this was an incident or issue within the relationship. 93% topping out the list, the issue was deception. 91% problematic or secretive sexual behavior. 87% emotional and psychological abuse. 83% infidelity. Going down the list, and you can look at these numbers for yourself, unwanted lack of emotional intimacy, financial abuse, unwanted lack of sexual intimacy, mental illness, problematic drug or substance alcohol use, sexual coercion or manipulation, domestic violence, spiritual crises of faith, legal violations that were sexual in nature, new information about sexual orientation, unwanted sexual touch, problematic eating, gaming, or gambling, legal violations that were non-sexual in nature, physical illness or injury that was chronic, stalking, unwanted physical touch, rape, and physical illness or injury that was occasional versus chronic. So the items that I highlighted up here in red at the top of the list, these are the 4 that topped the category of decisive impact. So 52% cited deception as being the decisive impact in the ultimate outcome of that relationship. 44% identified problematic and secretive sexual behavior as that decisive issue. 33% the emotional and psychological abuse involved, and 44% the infidelity was that decisive factor. The next thing we looked at was interpersonal and emotional dynamics that either existed or evolved within the course of that relationship. Here again, we broke it down to what did you experience occasionally, often, or always. This is the number that is the cumulative responses that said that this did occur within their relationship. They had this experience within their relationship. 88% said, I felt sexually betrayed or deceived. 76 sexually inadequate or sexually unsatisfied. 71% felt dread or distress about sex. 70% said they wanted and enjoyed sex. 65% felt objectified or exploited. 64% satisfied. 62% non-responsive, 61% responsive, 60% felt sexually coerced or manipulated, and 50% felt violated and victimized about sex within their intimate relationship. Here we have interpersonal dynamics that were not specifically or exclusively related to sex and romance, intimacy, and all of that. 91% said I felt lonely, 87% unloved. We have ignored, blamed, traumatized, isolated, unwanted, vulnerable, numb, unsafe, gullible, loved, regret, contentment, and safety. So big picture here, a lot of emotional and interpersonal dynamics going on within these relationships that we know did not ultimately survive. From a sexual health perspective especially, we have to pause here and look at and integrate the relevance of biological developments during the course of one of these relationships. So here we're addressing specifically changes to hormonal, sexual, and reproductive systems in one or both parties. And here again, I'm going to remind you that we're talking about relationships that lasted up to 38 years, with that average being 19.2. So approximately 20 years is our average length of time that we're looking at these biological developments playing out between a couple. So 70% of our respondents experienced pregnancy, miscarriage, and or childbirth over the course during the duration of that relationship. 25% postpartum depression, 25% hormonal changes due to menopause or andropause, and 25% illness or injury impacting sexual or reproductive systems. So this would be things like endometriosis or ovarian cysts, so testicular cancer, issues like that. 16% reported a hormonal change due to thyroid issues, which ultimately has a big impact on biology as well. Intervention in terms of termination. I wanted to know who sought help individually or together and who took action to formally end the relationship. So 94% of our respondents said, I sought individual help. 44% said my partner sought individual help. 62% said we sought relationship help together as a couple. In terms of termination, 75% of respondents took that action to formally end the relationship. 12% said my partner took that action. 10% we mutually agreed to end the relationship, and we had a small collection of those who categorized the termination in other terms. I chose two of our respondents' answers here to highlight two different points of view that I think encapsulate and summarize kind of the complexity and the collective weight of all of this everything in between zone stuff. So one said, I always felt on a roller coaster. I deeply desired sexual intimacy more often than my partner, but I did not realize that my partner was gay. Although I did not feel loved by my partner did things that symbolized love. So during our marriage, I convinced myself that I was loved. My head always felt on the verge of exploding from all of the conflicting emotions. Can't imagine why that would be true. I was deceived for decades. When the truth came out, I wanted him to be the man I had believed he was. I wanted him to love me, even though I found some of his actions repulsive. It was a hard place to be. I took my vows very seriously and I wanted it to work. So while I was lonely in my marriage, I still sought his affections in hopes that my love would turn his heart. The wake-up call was him getting arrested for the second time because of his behavior. In either of these scenarios and so many more, the cumulative impact upon one's sexuality is not difficult to understand or articulate. So, similar survey question. I asked our respondents, what 3 to 5 words describe yourself now as a sexual being after that relationship ended? So on the other end of this whole EIB zone. So we had 148 unique words and phrases that we got back. Here are the ones with repetitive and high frequency. 7 respondents cited their sexual self as being scared and fearful. 4, celibate. 3, angry, cautious, distrusting, numb, open, rejected, traumatized, unconfident. 2 respondents cited words like broken, curious, disgusted, exploratory, free, frustrated, horny, inadequate, insecure, liberated, lonely, regretful, sad, unhappy, unlovable, and untrusting. Among the other words that we received, apathetic, ashamed, attention-seeking, awake, confused, creative, crushed, damaged, defeated, deprived, desiring to be desired, despairing, detached, dissociated, don't trust sex, dormant, empowered, empty, floundering, fucked, glad I have no sex drive, gone, grounded, guarded, hate it, healing, heterosexual, homosexual, honest, hopeful, hopeless, ignorant, isolated, lacking, like a whore, lost, mature, no self-esteem, non-sexual, objectified, open to new experiences, out of control, over-sexualized, playful, pleaser, questioning my femininity, refusing to settle, relieved, removed, repulsed by sex, resigned, safe to nurture my sexuality, self-assured, sexually scarred, slut, starving for attention and affection and connection, stolen from, tempted, ugly, uninhibited, unresponsive, unwilling to go there, used, waiting, wanting more, wary, worthy, and wounded. So here we see this very broad spectrum of responses. And for individual respondents, some of these words that you wouldn't necessarily imagine coexisting in one particular sexual self, this is what we see represented across this spectrum. Again, how much impact would these experiences have moving forward into a post-separation sexual self? I always throw this little slide in here relative to life stress units anytime I present on the topic of separation or divorce. So back in the 1960s, I think it was 1967, Thomas Holmes and Richard Rae created this life stress unit measurement for a social readjustment rating scale. 43 different life events, and they gave each one a life change unit measurement, so a different measurable weight for the amount of stress caused by that particular life event. The top ranked stress event in this study was the death of a spouse. It maxed out the life change unit scale at 100. Second on that list is divorce at 73 life change units. Divorce topped life experiences such as marital separation at 65 LCUs, a jail term, 63 LCUs, and the death of a non-marital family member, also 63 LCUs. I pull out this scale when I am seeking to support a client who's trying to wrap his or her head around, why is this divorce throwing me for such a loop? Why have I lost my bearings? Why am I so overwhelmed? Why am I having a breakdown in some cases? This is a very validating scale to pull out. You can research it more. There's some fun little exercises online. You can even input your own life experiences and kind of get your own cumulative LCU score, but it's a really useful little tool to have. I wrote this for one of my programs describing the experience, the transpositional experience of a woman at the beginning of her marriage, in this case, to the end of it. It says, by the time a woman reaches the end of her life with her partner, she has undergone an excruciating process of debridement, that process of clearing out things that are complicating and infecting a wound that's been created, and debridement, often becoming the antithesis of the woman who once entered into that relationship. Staring down this road of debridement and debridement, she bravely dares to wonder, where will I be when this relationship is dissolved? So that brings us to what I call the acura zone, the bravest first steps forward. Acura, here's the definition for it as we use it in this application. One day, leafing through a Japanese dictionary, I came upon a word that caused me to marvel because it had so many different meanings. That word is acura. It means to pierce, to open, to end, to make a hole in, to start, to expire, to unwrap, to turn over. And at the end of a relationship, acura refers to that empty space that is created, the void, the opening in which a new beginning can take place. I was amazed at the power of a single word that could suggest that to begin and to end are the same, part of one never-ending cycle of renewal and healing. This quote is written by Susan Anderson. She wrote a beautiful book that I utilize frequently called Journey from Abandonment to Healing, understanding the 5 stages of loss that accompany, or 5 stages of grief that accompany the loss of love. Here's another quote that I love that refers to this dynamic in this demographic. No woman ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and she's not the same woman. So precedent to this point, we've been talking about some of those things that induce or incite changes within an individual human being. We're also going to look ahead at some of the changes that occur externally from herself. So the social, the dating world, the romantic world, the culture, the life experiences waiting externally for this transition point. What now? Brave first steps, early first encounters. We're going to look at 3 points here. Length of time. How much time passes before your first post-separation sexual encounter? We're going to look at sex versus romance. Did this first encounter involve romantic attachment, or was it exclusively sexual and sexual stimulation in nature? And thirdly, the emotional aftermath. How did you feel after that first post-separation sexual encounter? Okay, so survey question was this: how long after your separation did you first pursue a sexual encounter? I've divided it down the middle here. On the left-hand side, we have an online sexual encounter and the statistics we generated from that, and an in-person sexual encounter here on the right side of the slide. So the general length of time, 77% of our respondents have not had an online sexual encounter as of the point of the survey. 46% have not had an in-person sexual encounter. So the occurrence, the frequency of an in-person sexual encounter is greater than that of an online one. The time frame is exactly the same in terms of the shortest period of time between the end of a relationship and first sexual encounter, and that is within that first 3 months, so really quite quickly after the end of that precedent relationship. The longest period of time on the online side, we have 5 years as the longest period of time between a respondent's end of relationship and first sexual encounter. And on the in-person side, 8 years, the longest time between that point of separation and first sexual encounter. On average, it pretty much evens out across the board. 1.15 years, the average length of time for a first online sexual encounter, 1.35 years, the longest or the average period of time for an in-person sexual encounter. 22% have had an online encounter within that first year and a half. 59% have had an in-person encounter within that first 1.5 years. So we asked, did this first sexual encounter after separation involve romantic or emotional attachment? 37% said, I'll let you know when I find out. 46% said, yes, there was indeed a romantic and emotional attachment to that person within that encounter. And finally, 12% said, no, that it was simply sexual in nature. There was not a romantic or emotional connection. What 3 to 5 feeling words or phrases describe your emotional state following this first sexual encounter after separation, if applicable? So we received 80 unique words and phrases back. Here are those with high and repetitive frequency. 7 said they felt free. 5, excited, fearful, wanted. 4, desired, desirable, exhilarated, guilty, happy, relief, and some shame. 3 respondents used the word hopeful, nervous, safe, vulnerable. 2 used words like amazed, confident, elated, euphoric, healing, liberated, no regrets, and a little bit of shock. Additional words: alive, anxious, apprehensive but safe, ashamed, awakening, beautiful, bliss, brave, care, cautious, confused, content, curious, depressed, desiring, detached, dissatisfied, ecstatic, emotional, emotionally numb, enjoyable, exhausted, feeling like me again, feminine, free from control, fun, functional, genuinely happy, happy, hungry, I was enough, impurity, incredibly proud of myself, insecure, intimacy, isolation, joyful, lesbian, lonely, lost, loved, meh, morally confused, needed, not fulfilling, numb, proud, pursued, regret, relaxed, sexual, suspicious, tender, unsatisfied, unwanted, very satisfied, vindicated, wanting more, worried, and worthy. So again, a very broad spectrum of emotional responses resulting from this early or initial sexual encounter post-separation. 4 quotes that I pulled. I felt happy someone found me desirable. I finally felt really safe and loved, a real bond. I was proud of myself for making my own sexual decisions, and I realized what I had been missing. So when it comes to helping and supporting ourselves and our clients through this process of re-engaging future sex and romance, one of the things that we often come up against is trying to decipher and discern what is fantasy, like what is a pipe dream, not going to happen, you know, some happy ever after Cinderella fairy tale fantasy, versus what is realistic, what dare I hope and expect and anticipate out of this process of re-engaging sex and romance after relational trauma. So I'm going to play for you 2 audio clips that I've isolated here that I love as a compare and contrast mechanism. So this first one is from a dating website that is no longer in existence titled Fidelity Dating. So in order to join Fidelity Dating, you have to sign a contract saying, number one, you are single, you are not currently in a relationship with somebody else, and secondarily, that you will never in any way, shape, or form commit infidelity or cheat on your partner. So this is the little bit of promo created by Fidelity Dating to advertise what this experience is all about. Oh, excuse me.
After dating her boyfriend for several months, Kate wanted to update her status on social media to in a relationship, but she noticed his status was engaged to someone else. She was hurt and angry. Rob decided to surprise his wife with flowers at work. When he arrived at her office, he saw her kissing her co-worker. He was shocked and devastated. Kate and Rob are afraid to date because they fear being betrayed and hurt again. Luckily for them, there's Fidelity Dating. Join Fidelity Dating if you've been cheated on or betrayed. Join Fidelity Dating if you believe in being faithful. Join Fidelity Dating now.
How perfect, how beautiful, what could possibly go wrong? The next clip I'm going to play for you is a recording. It's a voicemail that a woman left for me. I was working with her approximately 10 years ago. The morning after her first sexual experience following the end of a 14-year marriage. It's a very conservative religious woman. And I share this with her permission. By the way, she does not identify her name. She uses the name of a partner, which was a nickname, so it is also anonymous on that end of the equation. I'm just going to let this speak for itself because it's pretty powerful. The recording is quiet, so if you have volume, you might want to amp up in order to make sure you don't miss this one.
Good morning. It's me. I'm sort of stuttering. I don't know where to start. It's Friday morning, 9:20. A big fantasy that I had happened last night, and I will just take it as a gift from the universe. So I went out with Alex. He picked me up, and he's really stunning, really gorgeous. He looks like, I don't know, this Russian, like, I don't know, it's so good looking. I can't tell you how attracted I was to him. My whole body felt like it was on fire or something. And he asked me where I want to go. We ended up going to his house, and I just let myself go. I just let myself go and have fun. We went. He made me a juice, and we did make out, and we actually went really far, and it was really incredible. We were together for 7 hours at his home. We ate dinner together, and it was really intimate. And he took me home, and we kissed, and he has not messaged me after that. And what's interesting is, like, I have so much faith in God. I'm still, like, emotional because, well, I think the emotion is just from gratitude. I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity. He was just the most amazing man. And just to connect to that energy was just so amazing that he loves his kids and he's gorgeous. And it was just so natural between us. And it felt so good. And it's hard for me because I don't know if I could trust him. I don't know if the whole thing was just so he could use me. I don't know. But all I know is that I had a really good time. And I'm really grateful. That's all I know. I'm so grateful. I don't care. It's interesting. I don't care if he calls me back. It was just exactly what I needed yesterday. It was like this big, huge gift from the universe. It was like God loving me and hugging me. And it was so beautiful. It was it just aroused and soothed and healed every part of my life and every pain. I love you, Crystal. Bye.
So I will be forever grateful to this brave, beautiful young woman for giving me her permission to share this recording, because it echoes the stories and the sentiments that I hear from my clients every single day in my practice. And it's rare that I have an opportunity to capture that and share it with others in a context like this one. So the sexploration zone, navigating this liminal landscape between what was and what comes next, we're going to look at how our evolving sexual selves play out in this sexploration zone. I asked our respondents, since separation when considering a potential sexual partner, which physical, sexual, romantic, or relational criteria are important to you? What appeals to you? 97% tops out the list as sobriety and non-impairment. I think that's a really good starting place. I'm glad that our respondents want a sober and non-impaired sexual partner. Going down the list, and this, by the way, is sorted in order of how many respondents cited this as a criteria of relevance. So personality and humor, potential for long-term relationship status currently, sexual chemistry, substance use or disuse, income and finances, sexual orientation, addiction history, age, character and values, education, parenting status, political views, past relationship history, testing for STIs, flirtation or rapport, physical or sexual features, religion or spiritual beliefs, geographic proximity, hobbies and interests, intelligence, sexual experience and history, and sexual prowess, bottoming out the list of important criteria, interestingly enough. I want to flag this 82% citation for testing for STIs. We're going to refer to that a little bit later and its relevance to sexual health. Two quotes that I pulled because they present and reflect different, kind of divergent and adjacent orientations about how these respondents feel in terms of their new partner eligibility. So one wrote, because I am only open to sex within a committed, healthy relationship, my ratings must first assume such a relationship. I cannot emphasize enough how mind-blowing it is to experience the lack of eligible, healthy, heterosexual single men. Even without regard to factors such as race, age, socioeconomic status, and physical appearance, they're virtually non-existent. So while I'm comfortable with my sexuality, the painful truth seems to be that a relationship like the one I would require to be intimate is highly improbable because I cannot find an adequate, healthy prospect. I have discussed with my therapist the desire to only date men who have been through some sort of recovery program, whether for divorce, addiction, or otherwise, as that's the only population of men I know who have worked to take an internal inventory and establish real values. Now, from one point of view, this sounds negative, it sounds cynical, but I will say it reflects what I hear often from women I know re-entering this stage of single sexuality. From a slightly different vantage point, I joined Match.com after my divorce, and the men that I met were all very nice. I had a religious community around me that did not support me dating. They would make me feel ashamed and even call to ask me if I was having sex with these men. I was a grown adult, but I felt like I had to sneak around, which would also make me feel guilty. But truth be told, I was enjoying meeting these men and being dated. I did have sex with several of them, and I enjoyed it. I never felt threatened by any of them or felt I had to commit to them. It was just nice to feel desired and discovering that God still loved me and was not going to send me to hell. I asked our respondents, since your separation, have your sexual interests and preferences changed significantly? 30% said yes, major changes. 2% minor, 22% responded as a minor change. 22% said no changes at all, and 26% said I'm still figuring this out. One of the quotes from the respondents, I don't think my interests have changed, but I've been able to get real and be honest about them. I asked our respondents, if your sexual pursuits have changed, what reasons have you cited for exploring encounters that are different from what you experienced within your former relationship? And I want to highlight this, especially for those of us who are practitioners within this field. These specific categories create and generate a lot of conversation with our clients. So you may want to grab and save this one for future reference. 65% cited safety, pursuit of sex with decreased triggers or risk for re-traumatization. 52% said loneliness, pursuit of sex with increased affection, attention, and attachment. 52% said expansion, citing the pursuit of sex that evolves one's sexual self-identity, self-discovery, or self-recovery. 34% said intensity, pursuing sex with high factors for stimulation and satisfaction. 23% curiosity, citing pursuit of sex with increased novelty or variety. 21% convenience, sex with minimal complication or infringement upon responsibilities. Finally, 20% said it's about rebellion. It's about pursuing sex that resists or rejects others' expectations. I asked our respondents, since separation, have you explored sexual encounters outside of your previously identified sexual orientation? 91% said no. No sexual encounters outside of previously identified sexual orientation. 76% said no curiosity, no interest in doing so. 12% said, I'm curious or interested because I want to explore something new and different. 4% said, I'm curious or interested because I no longer trust individuals of my former partner's gender. 4% said, I'm curious or interested, but won't consider it because of my religion or belief system. This may be my favorite slide of the entire presentation, so log that if you wish. In contrast to my former sexual experiences, I am now what? So I am less aware and assertive about my sexual desires, or I am more aware and assertive about my sexual desires. 2% said they are less aware and assertive. 73% said I am more aware and assertive. 1% said I am less comfortable discussing consent, safety, and boundaries with partners. 74% said I am more comfortable with this. 11% said I am more comfortable with my sexuality. Let me rephrase that. 11% said that I am less comfortable with my own sexuality. 62% said I am more comfortable with my own sexuality. 17% I am less confident about my sexual performance. 56% I am more confident about my sexual performance. 9% less discriminating about choice of sexual partners. 62% more discriminating about choice of sexual partners. 15% less likely to engage in serial sexual relationships. 37% more likely to engage in serial sexual relationships, 20% less likely to talk about sexual experiences with friends and family, and equal number saying they are more likely to talk about sexual experiences with friends or family. From a sexual health advocacy point of view, I love that this reflects a trend and increasing ability, in contrast to former sexual experiences, to be self-aware, self-assertive, and self-advocating within our sexual relationships. Compared with the last time I dated at the end of a significant relationship, we human beings are having much more conversation and public discourse surrounding the topic of consent. And I would add here affirmative consent. This wide-scale social dialogue actually makes it much easier for me to initiate sexual conversations with potential partners. Now, here's the other side of that spectrum, and this is one I really want us to pay attention to. One respondent wrote, I struggle to communicate clearly and consistently about sex. My best intentions don't always translate into speaking up for my best interests. I hear this more frequently within my practice than represented in the previous slide, than the awareness and expression and advocacy referenced in the previous slide. I struggle to communicate clearly. This is a very self-empowered, self-aware woman, yet struggles to communicate clearly and consistently about sex. My best intentions don't always translate into speaking up for my best interests. As practitioners, especially, we want to be aware of this potential for there to be a gap between one's ability to show up for himself or herself in other areas of life and perhaps the complexities and the disadvantages involved in trying to do so within sexual relationships. Since your separation, to what degree have environmental or situational challenges impacted your sexual exploration? What makes this thing harder than the last time you were exploring sex and romance? So 72% said more internal fears, anxieties, or inhibitions. 61% lack of exposure to eligible partners, as we've discussed. 58% cited a diminished self-image as a challenge. 54% lack of interest or energy. 48% childcare, parenting time issues. 40% social isolation due to COVID. We had a great opportunity to insert this into the survey at this particular point in history. 35% said lack of personal space or privacy. There's not enough privacy in my life to have much of a sexual or romantic life. 33% lack of time just doesn't top the chart anymore as a top priority within my life and my situations. 32% the external opinions and criticism of others. 30% cited lack of finances, not enough disposable income to support an active sexual or romantic life. 27% cited a strained relationship either with one's own former partner or with one's partner's former partner. It can happen on both ends of that equation. And finally, social isolation in general. Oftentimes, we're not as much out there in the world as we may have been when we were dating in a younger stage of life. Contemporary rules of engagement. What's changed since you began your former relationship? 61% said different access and exposure to eligible partners. 48%, the amount of time that's kind of expected and average between meeting someone and having sex with them. 48%, the degree of comfort level discussing sex with prospective partners. 38% current means of sexual protection and contraception. 48% expectations between sexual partners. 60% methods for meeting prospective partners, and 39% sociocultural rules about sex. I apologize, these are disordered here in order of percentage. Sexpectations. Since separation, how has been your experience of sexual exploration? How has it matched your expectations about the process? 39% said better than expected. This number surprised me actually and made me very happy. 36% say yet to be determined. Ask me at another point in time, maybe I'll have more information. 14% said it's been the same as I expected. 10% said it's been worse than I expected. Okay, here's one of my favorite slides. Sexploration highlights. So far, what's been the best part of your sexploration after separation experience? And next, we're gonna look at some of the worst parts. Abstinence while healing. This is important. The bulk of our conversation in this session is about having sex or choosing sexuality. We need to also identify that choosing to or deciding to or defaulting to not having sex is a sexual choice. So abstinence while healing has been the highlight of sexploration for one particular respondent. Allowing myself to be willing after years of emotional abuse to let someone into my life again, being heard about my wants, needs, and fears, and being respected for that, being who I want to be without guilt, exploring new kinds of sex while feeling deeply loved, loving, wanted, and wanting, feeling things I haven't felt ever, finding an intimacy that goes way beyond sex, freedom to say no. I know myself and I know what I like and I want, and I won't settle for a lazy and uninspired lover anymore. Not having sex and peace from the drama that sex can bring. Not wanting to find love, but having it just happen. Partner stopping in the middle of sex while I cried and held me and co-regulated with me through breathing and caring words. Isn't that beautiful? Patience and understanding with my fears and my tears. Peace, no fear, no dread, deep love. Realizing that I'm a great lover. Realizing sex can feel amazing, like actually having orgasms. Realizing that I can have sex and Jesus still loves me. realizing that I don't need anyone's permission but my own to maintain high standards and healthy boundaries, realizing that I can have desires, I still have desires, and I am desirable. I can express what I want, sex that is easy, convenient, and safe, the chance to start over, hope for something different, and trust in myself that enables great sex. 4 quotes from our respondents: a romantic online connection built over 3 months and then met in person for a weekend together, most gratifying experience sexually of my life. I felt I did the work of grieving and processing my last relationship before I left it. I had been lonely and unfulfilled for years. I didn't expect to meet a new partner so quickly, but I felt ready to have some fun and felt confident about what my boundaries were. I felt like I had myself back and my life was more balanced and joyful than it had been for a long time. I was surprised to meet someone I wanted to keep. I'm dating someone 16 years younger than me, and it's a lot of fun. My first experience was wonderful. It was what I needed at the time. I felt free. My pleasure was of utmost importance. I don't regret the act. I do regret believing that this relationship would go the distance. In spite of my moral confusion over having sex, I am with someone that respects me, is a good communicator, and I feel honors me in his actions. And finally, our physical relationship has been healing as I was ignored sexually for years. I finally feel desired and thought of by someone I respect and respects me well. It has been refreshing. So opposite end of the spectrum, sexual lowlights, what have been the worst parts of your sexploration after separation experience so far? Being lied to about my partner's sexual habits and substance use, and then rejecting me when I called him on it. Fear of getting pregnant, fear that I would not be good enough, frustration, guilt from having unmarried sex. He wants round 2 and I just can't. I'm distrusting and unsafe with men in general. I'm physically ready, but not emotionally ready for sex with a new partner. I'm a Christian in love with another Christian woman, and it's all just so complicated. Isolation and existential dread about masculinity and aspects of humanity. It's a big statement. Loneliness. Marrying another damn sex addict. Men are often lousy lovers. My body is old. Ugh. My first experience, he wanted sex and I wanted to be loved, and I felt dirty and used. My moral grappling, the absence of any legitimate relationship prospects, the idea of another human being seeing me naked, the dread and regret of going out of control after separation, that intense need to feel desired, the times when I didn't listen to my inner knowing and got hurt again, the pain I felt in finding myself, trying to break the habit of performative sexual interaction. It's deeply ingrained. Trauma responses and triggers during sexploration, trying to sort through my own femininity after my husband had multiple affairs with men, and when it ended. So 4 quotes that I pulled from respondents here. First time masturbating, I cried with the realization that this is all that's left, that my sexual experiences for the foreseeable future will be non-relational, physically satisfying, but emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically not. Getting over that initial I feel like I'm cheating feeling, the result of being sexual again with someone new after 8 years of marriage. The worst part has been my own triggers. But to be fair, these have always led to open conversations with my new partner wherein I felt heard and valued, and he shared too. So they ended up being difficult conversations that led to growth and deeper fulfillment. I love this last quote. This respondent had the guts to talk back to me a little bit in terms of what he or she felt about this word sexploration that I've assigned to this project. The word sexploration is triggering me. That's not what I want. That's what he wanted. I don't want to search. I want to bond. I don't want to try out new people. I want to deepen my relationship with the right one. I don't want to be set adrift, but here I am again, having to choose between dating or singleness. In my relationship, I was sexually passionate, responsive, curious, playful. I loved sex, but that was when I believed I was fully loved, accepted, and safe. Not sure I will ever fully believe that again. Innocence lost. I asked our respondents at the time of this survey, how content are you with your current relationship status? 6% said very unsatisfied, 14% said unsatisfied, 25% neutral, 21% satisfied, and 32% are very satisfied. So in this next section, we look at the deepest fears and the highest hopes expressed by respondents about their post-separation sexual life. So the survey question was this: what fears about sexual vulnerability come to mind as you explore post-separation sex? And we dissected it a little bit further. Do you believe these fears are possible? Meaning, yeah, that might happen. Probable, I am sure that will happen. Unavoidable, there's no question about it, it's predestined, fait accompli, or has it already happened within your sexploration experience? So here's what we got back. These are sorted in priority or hierarchy of those who believe that this fear is possible. So any degree of fear at all that this might happen. Top of the list, sexually transmitted infections. I may catch a disease or virus. Rejection, I'm not sexy enough. Dissociation, I may feel numb or disconnected from sex. Dysfunction, my body doesn't function as I expect or intend. Objectification, I'm reduced to the sum of my body parts to the exclusion of my personhood. Shame, self-loathing over my sexual choices or experiences. Sexual anorexia, extreme anxious avoidance of sexuality. Sexual secrets, my sexual partner may eliminate or manipulate information. Sexual assault or coercion. Sexual consent is absent or ignored. I can't say no. Sexual conquest, being a notch on my partner's belt. Sexual use and lose. That's a term I've created to express this experience of only being valued for sexual performance and then discarded when that value has diminished. Sexual trauma. Present triggers may ignite past distress. Sexual extortion, my sexual choices may be used against me. Pregnancy, I or my partner may conceive. And finally, addiction or compulsion, I may get in over my head. So I invite you to look at these numbers more closely. The first column, things that are possible. Second column, things that are probable. Third column, things that are unavoidable. And fourth, those that have already happened. Two numbers I'm going to call out here, and they're circled here in red. Dissociation, 39% of our sex explorers cited dissociation as one of their greatest fears, and it has the one with the most cumulative reporting between what respondents believe is possible, probable, unavoidable, or it's already happened. The second greatest cumulative number is the sexual trauma, these triggers that may reignite past distress. So these are two specific issues that we, especially as practitioners within this field, need to be aware our clients are either really afraid of this or are convinced it's going to happen or have already experienced them. And what I found, especially with the dissociation one, is that when we describe to our clients what dissociation is about and what it looks like, what it feels like, what it may play out like within their relationships, if or when it happens, it is assuring to know that it's not something off the charts and not something that has previously been unaddressed. The other thing I want to highlight here, remember when I looked back before on the list of criteria that was important in choosing a new sexual partner, and I said that sexually transmitted disease or being tested for STDs and STIs was lower on the list than I would have liked to see it. Here we see STIs as the top possible fear reported by our respondents. There's a bit of a disconnect there because we hear the respondents saying, this is my top fear, and yet it is not the top criteria for sexual partners. So we may want to go ahead and address that within our work with clients. Quick check-in here. What are the greatest hopes expressed by our respondents? What hopes about sexual satisfaction come to mind as you explore post-separation sex? Do you believe these hopes are impossible, improbable, achievable, or have they already happened? So, highest hopes about post-separation sex: sexual satisfaction through self-pleasure, sexual satisfaction within a loving relationship, maintaining sexuality. Let me restart that. Maintaining sexual safety is the #1 priority. Sexual satisfaction while remaining true to my own values, learning to protect and trust myself through cautious and progressive sexual encounters, eliminating unwanted sexual patterns from the past, sexual satisfaction within a safe and comfortable friendship, and sexual satisfaction within a low pressure or no pressure context. These are sorted according to this first column again. Those that are No, let me rephrase that. These are sorted by the, how did I sort these? I think this is the achievable. Okay, so what do we believe is achievable? What do we think is we can actually make happen here within our post-separation sexuality? So this third and fourth column here. So here's the number I want to highlight: the impossibility, the people who believe that these hopes are nothing but a fantasy and a pipe dream. 3%, 2%, 1%, 3%, 1%, 1%, 3%, 9%. These are low numbers. I was very surprised, even though I know that this is an optimistic and inspiring demographic, to hear these low numbers. Very few of our respondents believe that their deepest and highest hopes for sexuality are impossible or unreachable. On the contrary, and these high numbers on the right hand of the graph here, these are things that respondents believe are achievable or they've already happened. 76%, 87%, 88, 74, 74, 81, 51, and 42. These are also very encouraging numbers. Okay, holding space for Sexplorers. What kind of support truly matters? So whether we're holding space for ourselves in this journey or for others, what does that support actually look like? 2 quotes from the respondents. This is a subject that no one discusses. It is a very lonely road to walk. After having only one partner for your entire life, yet you're not feeling ready to bury your sexuality yet. Where is the new playbook? If I had to isolate one sentiment that was the ultimate inspiration and driver for this entire project, this is it. This one respondent wrote it out. Hundreds of others have spoken it to me in various contexts. Where is the new playbook? I haven't been able to speak about this to anyone but my partner. It's all a secret and it's messing with my head. Well, I don't blame you. It would mess with my head too. So here's the survey question we put out to respondents. What support system or systems have been most helpful to you while exploring post-separation sexuality? So these are sorted here by the total number of respondents that said this has been either somewhat or very helpful. My own inner compass, close friends, counselor or therapist, media, spiritual or religious convictions, a support group that's peer-led, medical care providers, immediate family members, a support group that's professionally facilitated, a coach, extended family members, a faith-based support group, and sexual health organizations. Here's the thing I want to highlight on this slide. These numbers, this very top cumulative total of responsivity in terms of what is helpful, either somewhat or very helpful, 77% of our respondents cite their own inner compass as being the most helpful support system they have. Now, when we talk about the impact, the traumatic impact of betrayal, of abandonment, of abuse, of these different relationship ruptures, we know that that ability to trust one's own intuition and instincts and self-preservation is often wounded, it's often damaged, it's often disoriented. What this slide suggests to me is a really powerful piece of information that our respondents, our Sexplorers, actually believe that they can still, to some degree or another, rely upon that own inner compass as a support system. So survey question, what have you needed from helping professionals? That's the top half of this slide. And what have you needed from your loved ones while exploring post-separation sexuality? By the way, for those of you who may have downloaded the PDF already for this PowerPoint, I transposed these. So this is the correct slide. The one you have may not be. So professionals, clergy, clinicians, coaches, counselors, community leaders, what have you needed from them while exploring post-separation sexuality? Non-judgmental spaces to process new experiences. This was the total amount of need expressed by our respondents. Tools to manage sexual triggers and relational trauma was close behind it. Permission to wait until I felt ready. Recommendations for books, podcasts, blogs, etc. Action plan for reintegrating sex and dating into my post-separation life, because it doesn't actually happen by default in most cases. Clear fact-based information about sexual safety, risks, and responsibilities. Again, this beautiful expression of non-judgment as a critical piece of support from helping professionals, but also this lower number of respondents who believe they need from their helping professionals this fact-based information about sexual safety, risks, and responsibilities. Again, I believe that we as practitioners can up our game and close that gap a little bit in offering and providing that in terms of support for our clients and our contacts. So what have we needed from loved ones, friends, family, social circle, faith community during this post-separation sexual exploration? Non-judgment, again, tops the list with 80% of respondents saying it is the top need or a significant need within their exploration experience. Permission, grace, and space to keep my private life to myself. invitations to increase my social life, get out there and introduce or meet new people, enthusiasm and assurance that it's okay to share, or clear boundaries that indicate when it's not, practical support such as childcare, flexible scheduling, and financial support to support this sexploration life. Oops. Okay, what is holding space? This is a term we use a lot in this field. I've had the privilege of training with Heather Plett, the woman who wrote the article and first published on this particular phrase. This is what Heather writes about holding space. Holding space is the practice of compassionately witnessing, accepting, and supporting someone without judgment while retaining your boundaries and sense of self. I'm going to read that again. It's important. Holding space is the practice of compassionately witnessing, accepting, and supporting someone without judgment while still maintaining and retaining your boundaries and sense of self. This is what I propose as a powerful instrument for supporting others and honestly for supporting yourself as well through this exploration experience. Social support systems change a lot going through these transitions. Here's something I wrote several years ago for a client that identified this distinction between how my support system evolved and what I actually needed while going through my own divorce. In addition to losing my husband, I also lost more than half of my support system. Literally overnight, I was disowned by some of my dearest friends and most beloved family, shaking up my world in ways I hadn't ever thought to anticipate. In response to this loss, I chose to curate a very small, we're talking 3 or 4 people in the beginning, very special circle of friends and caregivers. These became the special peeps who helped me hold myself together. And perhaps more importantly, going back to that definition of holding space, peeps who knew how to hold themselves together on the rare occasions when I completely fell apart. I can't tell you how many times I hit a low spot in my own experience, and when sharing it with someone else, it suddenly became all about him or her. So this ability to hold on to oneself while supporting someone else through their experience is really important. This also comes into play when some of the things we're talking about today and the explorations of others may be in contrast or contradiction to your own belief system. The ability to hold on to yourself and not feel like you need to compromise your own convictions on behalf of others. So we asked our explorers, our sexplorers, our respondents, what advice would you give to others navigating sexual exploration after separation? Here's what they said. Be brave, be thoughtful, be self-aware, and be present, but mostly be brave. Be patient. Don't rush for that emotional quick fix. Boundaries are everything. Don't have sex just to make your ex jealous or get under to get over. Do it because you want it and it feels right. Don't compromise. Find and attend a comprehensive adult sexuality class. Yes, they exist. Follow your inner compass. Give yourself plenty of time to heal. Sex is wonderful, and so is knowing you're not using it to cope. Go slowly and take the time to work through all of the emotions that come with navigating this new space. Listen to your gut and trust yourself. Have a couple sessions with a sex therapist. Oh my gosh, I highly recommend that. Do trauma healing therapy. It is your personal choice. It's a numbers game. Get on the apps and swipe away. Let go of limiting beliefs. Look for behavior, not words. Never go back, ever. No one knows what's best for you better than you do. Pay attention to your body, protect your heart, put yourself first. Read about areas where you need advice, stay celibate as long as you can. Take it easy and go with what your gut says. Take precautions and stay safe. Take time and seek support. Time is your friend. Wait until you've healed and then wait even longer. So 2 beautiful quotes that wrap us up here and bring us home. After leaving an abusive relationship, you can find someone who will not abuse you. And once you leave an abusive relationship, your sexual appetite does change. It feels so different, and your body will react differently. The things my body has done have shocked me. I am happy to have found a great partner who does not have sexual addiction issues. He has been extremely kind and compassionate with everything I have divulged about my past. I feel incredibly safe in this relationship. It is a new normal to not worry about where he is or whom he's with. I would have never thought I could trust a partner again after the hell I lived through. But when actions match the words, Trust follows. It is such a good feeling to know that he loves me, cares for me, and would never seek another for sexual pleasure. I am more than just that to him. And this beautiful final last line that is kind of my crescendo for the whole presentation. I am a whole and valuable person, and that is as sexy as it gets. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. I want to invite you to contact me anytime. If you have other questions, you can contact me through my website, womeneverafter.com, my email address, GaelynRae@womeneverafter. And if you want more details, if you want more detailed breakdowns of these survey results, I would also be very happy to send those to you.